Okay, I just said this. Some of these patterns are common. There are all kinds of logical patterns. There are not all kinds of logical patterns. There's half a dozen logical patterns that you could have, ABB, ABA, ABC, 3 different roots, etc. But what we find is that some patterns are common, they're robust, they occur cross-linguistically, and others don't, right? Others are absent or virtually absent. And that tells us something. And I argue that what it tells us is that words have internal structure. Now for the comparative, long, longer, right? You have an ER, longest, you have EST. You see the structure there. It's harder to think of structure inside pronouns. But the only explanation that I'm aware of for the pattern in the adjectives, which I'll give you in just a second, crucially relies on there being structure in these things, in the words. So if that's the only way of explaining the pattern, then there must be comparable structure inside the pronouns. And so I'll give you an argument that pronouns for case and for number are structured. And where we'll get to in about 40 minutes, if I'm lucky, is some interesting ideas about the semantics of number. And I'm very nervous about presenting that in this audience, but I will just motor on and get to it anyway.
What you're seeing in the top left is a map of the United States, 2011, and these are surgical specialists per 100,000 population. So the darker the green, the more surgeons there are. So what you see is a concentration here in the Northeast. Actually, in Boston, we have the most anywhere in the world per capita, and lots of areas of the U.S. where people are relatively underserved. At the bottom right, the little dots on the U.S. map are the level 1 trauma centers. Again, we have 4 of them here in Boston, and huge swaths of the US without any access to these at all. Actually, 80% of the US landmass has no access to a level 1 trauma center. So these are 2 recent papers from the hand literature, both of which essentially get at the disparity and the disconnect between availability of surgical specialists and the need that patients have. What I see when I take a hand and face trauma call at our hospitals is that I see lots of patients transferred in because there's a relative unfamiliarity with hand and facial trauma. But yet, my personal experience as well as the experience in the literature is that the vast majority of these patients don't actually need to be transferred, both at great distances and great costs, both to themselves personally as well as to the healthcare setting. So the question is, how can we leverage Google Glass to make that experience better, both for the physicians as well as for the patients?
And this is the place also where the concept of construction activities, disruptions to activities, even though we may be addressing noise issues in Resource Report 9, there's still issues related to constructing in the vicinity of residences, etc. So this is the place where a lot of attention goes into defining how the pipeline is going to be constructed adjacent to residences, houses, public activities, schools, hospitals, etc. And the requirement is to be included in this resource report are resident-specific drawings showing how construction is going to take place.
So when some of us took on the challenge of trying to combine Montague's approach to semantics with Chomsky's approach to syntax and to linguistics in general, technical and substantive progress was rapid and successful, but there was still the apparent incompatibility of Chomsky's view of linguistics as a branch of psychology and the anti-psychologistic Fregean tradition viewing meanings as very abstract objects. In hindsight, what I for many years saw as a foundational problem, and I would ignore it a lot of the time, but it was there, it was always a nagging problem, I now see as a good thing, how semantics actually pushes us toward a less narrow view of what competence is and a less narrow view of what psychological reality means.